Hello everybody, and welcome to the Copper Spoon Inn & Tavern. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make Took's stew. I'll throw up the full ingredient list here so you can get everything that you're going to need ahead of time. Now, this is an older video, so I apologize for my lack of good camera work, but let's just roll with it. First, we're going to start by roasting our garlic. Now, I use 3 heads here. You can use less if you're not a garlic girl, but I love garlic. To perfectly roast garlic, you are going to put it in a piece of tin foil like you barely see me doing here. Drudge it with about a tablespoon, maybe a little more of olive oil. Wrap it up tightly and put it into a cold oven. Once it's in your cold oven, turn it on to 350 degrees, and once the oven has been fully preheated, set a timer for 1 hour. After that hour is up, go ahead and turn off your oven, but leave your garlic in there to cool for at least an hour, and that's going to be the way to perfectly roast garlic. Now you can just put this in a 350 degree oven, and after the hour is over, take it out. I've definitely done that before, and it roasts just fine. It's just going to come out much better and golden brown if you spend the time to do it like I mentioned before. Now, once the garlic is in the oven roasting, I went ahead and diced up my onion. If you want a full version of this video of me teaching you how to dice an onion like this, I will happily do so. Alright, now this step I am actually going to switch up on you. I put our olive oil and a tablespoon of butter into a pan, and right now I started sauteing the onions first. I take back this step completely. What you want to do is you want to brown your beef first. This is going to give a nice golden crust on your actual stew meat, and is going to add a lot of flavor to it. As opposed to this way where you add in the onion first and then you can add in the stew meat, but it's not going to get that nice browning on it. So, brown your meat first, take it out of the pan, then saute your onions and add in your seasonings, and then add your beef back in. Next, I added in garlic, and you can actually use any of the leftover pieces of the tips of your garlic that you had from earlier. I forgot to do that here, so I just used regular minced garlic, and then in goes all of my seasonings aside from the salt and pepper. Now, I added in these seasonings now because I wanted them to get nice and toasted in the pan and get some extra flavor. I did not add the salt and pepper though, because I didn't want to have the onions be too salty and the stew beef not be salty enough. So go ahead and salt and pepper everything when it's in the pan at the same time. Right now you can see I have my beef that I'm getting ready to chop up. Again, I would do this step first, brown the beef, and then saute the onions afterwards in the leftover beef juices. One thing I will mention is that when you go to stew your beef, do it in batches. Do it in small batches so that it doesn't crowd the whole pan. If you just throw all of your stew beef into the pan at once, it's not going to brown, it's just going to accumulate all these juices, and it's just going to be a little bit of a mess. So if you go in batches where the pan isn't too overcrowded, it's going to get a nice brown color on it. You can see me here trying to struggle with it. I was really trying to get it brown, and I was so confused as to why it wasn't doing it, and then I realized it's the onions that I cooked in there first. So if you do it this way, it's not the end of the world. It still came out delicious. As you can see here, it is browning, it is starting to cook, and it's releasing a lot of those juices. That will happen when you overcrowd the pan. Now, this isn't the end of the world. What you're gonna do is you're gonna keep cooking it until those juices evaporate completely. This will happen. It is going to take some time though, and that's actually what I'm waiting on here. All of those juices to evaporate before I add in my whiskey. Now, if you don't add alcohol to food at all, if you just don't drink, if you don't have whiskey around, you can completely and totally skip this step, or you can replace it with black tea. I let that evaporate for a little bit, then added in my beef broth, my bay leaves, and then my fresh herbs. cover that with a lid, and I let that cook for about an hour on medium heat while I got my potatoes ready. Here you see me peeling my potatoes, and then I just chopped them all up finely so I could get them into a pot to boil. We're making mashed potatoes here. Super simple, but what you want to do, I cut my potato pieces into smaller pieces so that it would boil faster. Now, you don't have to do this. You can honestly throw your entire potato in the pot to boil. It's just going to take a lot longer, and so it really just depends on how much time you have to get this meal done. At its shortest, you can probably get this full meal done within an hour, but the stew meat isn't going to be as tender as it usually would be. I recommend setting aside at least 3 hours for this meal just to make sure all of the flavors have time to develop and your stew beef gets really nice and soft. But again, if you want to make this a shorter meal, you 1000% can. Here I'm making the garlic butter for my mashed potatoes. I just have a stick of very, very soft butter in there. I added in some fresh rosemary and thyme, and in goes 1 full head of roasted garlic. I actually end up adding in another full head of roasted garlic later. So altogether, I put 2 heads of roasted garlic in the mashed potatoes, and I don't think I filmed it, but I'm pretty sure I put another full head inside the actual stew itself at the very end. So after I got that all mixed up, I went ahead and grated up my cheese. Gruyere is if you've never had it, it's really pungent, sharp. It's like a cross between Gouda and Parmesan. That's what it is. It's so good. It's creamy, but it's also super sharp. It's an amazing cheese and it works perfectly in this recipe, but really you can use whatever cheese you have. If you have cheddar cheese, if you have American, whatever you want to use, that'll be perfectly fine. I added in most of my garlic butter to the mashed potatoes, again that other whole head of garlic, and some of my shredded cheese. Now, you can make your mashed potatoes however you want. If you like them super smooth and creamy, make them as smooth and as creamy as you'd like. If you like them more thick and chunky, make them that way. That is up to your own taste here. This is for you. This is your dinner, your food that you're making, and so go ahead and make it to whatever specifications you like. Next, I went ahead and pulled out my rosemary and my thyme from the stew, as well as the bay leaves, because you don't want to chew on sticks when you're eating your dinner, and then added in my sludge. Sludge is just a mix of milk and flour, or broth and flour, and that's going to be a thickening agent when you don't have a roux. So that goes into the stew, and it's going to turn that broth that the beef's been cooking in into a nice gravy. As you can see here, it got nice and thick and just silky luxurious. Next is just assembly. Mashed potatoes go into the bottom of my bowl. I put the stew on top, covered it with cheese, and melted that into the oven until it was ooey gooey. I hope you enjoy.